I encourage all of us, whatever our beliefs, to question the basic narratives of our world, to connect past developments with present concerns, and not to be afraid of controversial issues. Noah Harari. Through my whole life, I was very in touch with my emotions, but I was always curious, searching for a meaning for them through my interpretation of my connections with others, and vice versa. At age 4, when I first discovered sound, I was fascinated by the power that it has for communication, to give voice to emotions and to help people communicate layers of themselves that are not even yet understood. Music triggers sympathy, empathy, and a care between people. And put simply, music makes the world better. As I began to experience more of the socio-political realities of my world, encountered more unfair conditions for myself and others, and as my emotions became more complex, I grew more and more in need of using the voice of music to communicate these emotions. Imagine this feeling. I was 8, about to perform on piano for an opening at my school, but they asked me to play behind the curtains because I am a girl and I have an instrument, which is a forbidden image under Islamic rules. I refused. Then I went home with a need to express my anger at such an unfair condition. The world of music became an augmented reality. It moved me with a thirst to create from scratch. I improvised, although I did not even know what I was doing. I did not even know improvisation was an acceptable approach to making music. I just played to engage with my surrounding when I was alone. Music became the voice to communicate that which my words could not. My classical training was a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, I could not be more grateful for all the years strictly studying and growing my sensitivity towards each single note. Whilst on the other hand, I never found it completely satisfying, as it stifled my creativity and my ways of engaging with others. Therefore, I did not always feel comfortable in my skin. I longed for more chances to explore and engage with sound, with music, with life around me. It became obvious that engaging with others through the language of music needed to be part of my educational alongside my desire for experimentation. The need of using music as a bridge to people. The need of using the world of imagination to interpret and engage with everyday feelings of the world around me and in me. I am in my cocoon. I am narrating and reflecting on myself. I reach out, pushing against the white walls. Each push brings more freedom. Each breath brings more life. The sounds outside come through like muffled drums. I feel them calling me. As soon as I learn to write, I fill notebooks back to front with my reflections, thoughts, and emotions. The cycle of experiencing, reflecting, configuring, and refiguring will be embodied within my life. During my master's study, I internalized it. Paul Ricoeur views the creation of a narrative identity as a threefold process: prefiguration, configuration, and refiguration. Absolutely centered to this process is that the individual threads of the story only have meaning in as much as they connect with the story as a whole. Prefiguration is the series of people and events existing as memories not yet organized into a coherent narrative. Configuration is the arrangement of these events into a story that the storyteller can use to define their identity. It contains the thread that ties them all together. Refiguration is where the narrative and the present meet, where the reader of the narrative applies the story to their actions. For me, as both narrator and reader of my own story, this then becomes a cycle that repeats. I configure events into my own self-narrative identity, then apply this understanding to my actions in future events, which then themselves become a part of a new narrative. My research was titled Good Thoughts, Good Words, Good Deeds, framing my journey from caterpillar to cocoon to butterfly. After finishing my second bachelor in classical piano at PCC, I was attracted to platforms where I could explore different layers of interpretation from other artistic disciplines. Studying a film composition pre-master with Jure Hanstra at Amsterdam Conservatorium had a big impact on me. He gave me the courage to explore new areas of creating. This step also synchronized with my two dear friends, Vidamir.nl and Amir Komeilizadeh, exploring new avenues in their films. This allowed me to be able to explore new sides of my practice as a composer and to create together for the first time. I was interested in the mentality behind the work as our late-night talks explored ideas of identity, society, and of course politics. The film Plot for Life was about women struggling with their identity in suppressed societies. For this film, I composed, acted, and performed piano. As soon as my NAIP studies started, I had the chance to go through a process of reformation. The 2-week intensive course in Zerai was a life-changing experience. Not only to have the chance to meet other musicians from all genres of music, but also dancers, actors, and artists of all kinds. In that safe space, I could tear off my outer layer, my cocoon. I danced, performed, sang, and even improvised with cows in a barn. It was a beautiful ritual that was led by my future NAIP mentors and coaches. And so I dove into a range of collaborations, as diverse as possible, in which I was able to wear different hats beyond labels, whether as a composer or performer or improviser. This was a continuous cycle of actions and reflections, guided by my mentor, Mark van Roon. Following this line, I was involved in 2 projects with students from the Minerva Academy of Arts, including Guido and Amir as the main makers. Both projects empowered people in 2 neighborhoods in Groningen. The outcome was 2 films made and screened in public. I improvised in Droomgasten and made and produced the music in Rings Out. After this, I started an ambitious and personal project called 3 Reflections, together with Thijs de Vlieger, who is 1/3 of a Groningen-based electronic band Noisia, and Nicolas Thayer, who became a dear friend and collaborator over the course of my study.
Hi, I'm Setareh.
Hi, I'm Nicholas and I'm Thijs.
All of us love making music somewhere on the line between electronic and acoustic.
After many late night talks, we found out that we're all most excited about interdisciplinary projects,
like contemporary dance,
Films.
performing arts,
so we just had to do something together.
and we all had the same idea.
We each want to write a piece for string quartet and live electronics.
We then want to make a short film to expand the idea of each of these compositions.
And finally, these films and the music will be reinterpreted for a live audiovisual concert.
برای همین ما به کمک شما احتیاج داریم واسه یک کمپین کراودفاندینگمون.
Besides helping us to bring the project to life, we have all kinds of cool rewards.
Maybe you want to have a cameo in one of the films.
Get in a group video call during a rehearsal.
Or maybe you even want a custom piece of music composed by us and recorded only for you.
Either way, check out our campaign, learn about the amazing team of creatives that we already have lined up, and see if you want to be part of the project.
I was involved in this project from the moment of conceptualizing, bringing together a beautiful string quartet and taking them to the studio, guiding them through improvisations that form the backbone of Thijs' piece. I spent a lot of time researching different techniques to be able to write for the new setting that contains a classical approach fused with the extended imagination from the world of infinite sounds and electronics. Also using some Persian techniques, such as adding ornaments and touches of maqam music from the Middle East. I decided to keep the electronics of this piece very performative, as I was the operator and performer of the electronics myself for our live shows. Using Rolly Seaboard, 2 MIDI controllers, main stage, Ableton, all running on 2 laptops. All new experiences. Ambitious. I also created the spots for myself to improvise with Seaboard and also guided the rest of the quartet to improvise, bringing some of themselves into the piece. Upon reflection, my compositional style for Wayfarer is a tone poem, evoking in the listener a series of stories, images, ideas, and emotions. Through this process, I came to understand that I use the studio and DAWs like any other instrument. The way I work on production is no different to working with a chamber ensemble or balancing all the phrases whilst playing piano. Only this time, I automate them. Composing, playing, and working with a string quartet was an intense but joyful process, made possible through our crowdfunding campaign, which in the end allowed us to accomplish our goals, with 191 backers giving €10,866 to help bring this project to life. premiered 3 Reflections in April 2019 at the Grand Theatre in Groningen, and it was then recorded, produced, and released. This is part of what I wrote about Wayfarer on its release. This is a story about a journeyer, a wayfarer, a refugee, going through doubts, conflicts, whilst walking on their paths. Sometimes this path is laid out before you with a shimmering clarity, and sometimes you can barely see your outstretched hands through the fog. But at all times, the way is already laid beneath your feet. All you have to do is to find the courage to walk forward. This project was so rewarding in so many ways. But as much as I enjoy working on long-term projects, I also had an immense need for storytelling through music, in the moment, for and with people, on and off stage. Improvisation. That night, after performing this classical fusion free improvisation concert at Martinus with Une van Geel and Andrea Caruso, cycling back home, I repeated in my head the words of Nina Simone.
I've had a couple of times on stage when I really felt free, and that's something else. That's really something else. Like I'll tell you what freedom is to me, no fear.
To close the first semester in the best way, we had a magical night. 4 hours on stage, mostly improvising and playing some of our compositions, together with visual artists from MedTech and my beautiful NAIP colleagues. The second long-term project, Sediment, began just days later. During the Christmas holidays, we started shooting on Hormuz Island in Iran. I became a part of the movie, which is the best possible scenario for a composer, not only to follow and interpret the visual through image and the script, but also to be a part of it, to feel the sequences. Sediment is a development of A Plot for Life that I mentioned earlier. It is a short docufiction film which encourages and celebrates the diversity of human life in the world. In the film, there is a focus on girls and women in 2 cultures, Iranian and Dutch, which gives the audience another way to look at diversities. The fictional story is close to my own journey, and so immediately I connected with it. The compositional approach is an example of a storytelling using 2 languages at once. All of my musical decisions are themselves a story which supports this narrative with a clear plot. To illustrate this, due to the restriction of my time, I will just talk about 2 scenes. The configuration, where the girl is awakening. Here's the place to narrate a new layer on top of the layers from society. To emphasize this concept of free will, I brought the individuality of the players, Melissa Delgado on viola and Alex Skorik on drums, into the music through guided improvisation, and then composed them in production. The electronics layers from a previous scene representing the conventional layers of society can still be heard, but slowly give way to new sounds that gradually become more rhythmical, evolving into a simple 3/2 riff. This scene represents refiguration. Here the fictional girl has completed this long journey of going through conventions and yet finding her voice. One voice from the many in that city. Through the whole film, I was cautious about dominating the story musically. As a film composer, supporting the story is the first priority. With this in mind, I was wondering how to compose for the last scene. Talking it through with Amir gave me the direction I needed. Make music that you want to be heard. The show was released on Spotify and all the other platforms, and also on a DVD that Vidamir produced together with a booklet and tracks. The whole process of transition is an ongoing evolution. From the first year to the second, I continued playing with different musicians, extending my vocabulary and versatility. Events such as the jazz festival Raider in Bulgaria, playing with Stefan Goranov and other old colleagues from the jazz world. Derived from a land between rivers, now to be found between lands. I created Metsub Trio together with Karun and Rani, both from Syria on cello and trumpet. This was at the beginning of my first year of master's study. I played piano and later added daf, an Iranian percussion instrument, to better accompany the part of our music, which is based on maqam music, and is built up using different scales with quarter tones that I could not play on the piano. One of the reasons that Metsop Trio began was because I wasn't sure if I could yet support myself financially through this new musical size that I'm opening up. So I decided to keep up my classical piano skills, bringing some financial stability by giving concerts with this trio. This part I connect with the course term item. This provides a safe ground for me to have courage to explore any new directions within my practice, which I could call ipse. But even this idea evolved, and at the beginning of the second year, I had a clear interpretation for my musical decisions. I realized that if I want to be entirely intentional and honest to the people that we are performing for and the ones that I'm playing with, then I should bring in some new direction. Perhaps the ipse had become item. Now, as a trio, we are pushing boundaries. After each gig, we open up new possibilities. We make new arrangements during rehearsals, and I bring poetry and guide us in improvisation. We already have a logo, designs, and our promo film and website is in the process of being made. My future plans for Metsop Trio involve composing myself, collaborating with dancers and other disciplines, as I now see the potential that this trio has. At this time, this was happening in Iran. Around this time, Vertex was formed, a multidisciplinary project with Amir, Vida, and Melissa. We were preparing for a performance in Atelier Groningen, and at that time, I felt compelled to create something that could engage with a terrible situation in Iran. As a child growing up in Iran, I experienced demonstrations, and they always followed a familiar cycle. I captured this within the form of this piece. It starts with electronics and voice, portraying a society in a state of suppression. And yet there are voices to be heard. These voices are melancholic themes that are coming out from the crowd. And then demonstration happened. I used a strong musical riff to represent the will of the people for change against their unjust situation. Every time it is suppressed with batons and clops using an electronics patch. Each time there is anger and frustration at how many people were killed or arrested. But this dies down and the people forget. You hear a voice using two different scales. That makes you confused, as if you have been given opium. And this cycle continues till you hear this poem by Rumi.
Dance in the middle of the fighting. Dance in your blood. Dance when you're perfectly free.
In my opinion, improvisation is entwined with the ability to work as a multidisciplinary musician, which is itself entwined with having skills and possibilities to engage with threads of time and people. This is for two reasons. Firstly, a personal reason. My process as a composer is entwined with improvisation. I spoke about it earlier. Second reason is that improvisation is a direct way of engaging with people, both other musicians and the audience. It is the second reason that I will now elaborate on, reading a little directly from my research about cognitive subconsciousness. Improvisation is a very human activity. We ask the question, how do humans connect through the lens of cognitive subconsciousness? In an improvisation setting, we process information far faster and on a far deeper level than our cognitive self could possibly do. In his book, This Is Your Brain and Music, Daniel Levitin outlines the neural functions the brain performs whilst interpreting music. The process of listening to music involves 7 areas of the brain, all happening at the same time, involving different kinds of analysis and narration. This is all done subconsciously. In improvisation, all of this is only half of the process. At the same time, we are also acting on all this information. In order for this process to happen, we must rely on our cognitive subconsciousness and its ability to process this information at speed alongside our musical abilities. In February 2020, I organized a month of improvisation to intentionally spend 2 or 3 full days in the studio exploring sound with 3 remarkable musicians and through creating to connect. It was a kind of artistic residency, and I was the host. The task now is to produce and mix all of these recordings into 3 separate albums. Une van Geel from Netherlands, Norman Adams from Canada, and Jan Hammersen from Denmark are all long-term professionals and experts in their field. Each world-recognized masters of their craft, who had chosen to pursue their own artistic identity outside of conventions. In reflecting on my time with these 3 musicians, a strong motto emerges. Once you have seen through the looking glass, there is no going back. All that I discovered about myself through the process of mimesis, I can see being lived by Une, Norman, and Jan. Whilst there is no method to follow in this journey of versatility, there are instead examples like these of other musicians who are walking a similar path, and from whom I can draw strength and inspiration. Of Ecstasy is a piece by English choreographer Andrew McNichol. I wrote and produced the score with my dear friend and colleague Nicholas Thayer. The ballet was originally choreographed to Scriabin's poem of Ecstasy, but Andrew decided to take the piece in a different direction and so commissioned us to write a new score. So, as our starting point, we already had a video of the choreography. We were to perform this live in a beautiful theater in London in April. But of course, it was postponed due to Corona. We are still aiming to premiere this piece and have already applied for UK funding from the three of us in order to continue this journey with a new piece. We explored sound through acoustic instruments, extended techniques, manipulation of the acoustic instruments, electronics, and sequencers. As well as composing and producing this piece, I played piano, sang, performed a sheet of paper, and whispered poetry. For her master's study, my friend Rosie Takema analyzed the cognitive process of 6 artists. I will read you a few paragraphs of my composing diary. January 5th. I used the idea of whispering parts of the poem Scriabin wrote to accompany his piece and recorded it, and we reversed the phrases. It sounds great. It is perfect. The effect and also the idea of bringing in the poem in some way makes me happy. The poem is beautiful, and I read an article about it and about the program music, so I am quite sure of bringing the poem in the piece. A while ago, I was experimenting with my violin with different collegno techniques. One tool that I tried on the strings was a tuning fork. The result was so interesting that I couldn't believe it. The movement of the tuning fork on the strings is so bright and mystical, but still clear and possible to cling on it if it comes between other layers. The way that it sounds is full of harmonics and overtones. And one thing I love for sure is overtones. Nick does too, so he will also love this idea. So, all good. January 10th. During a recent improvisation performance, I dared to try the tuning fork on the piano. Extended techniques are like painting the space with sound. The result was fascinating. I decided to improvise this section during the performance, and in the score only write the guidance for the improvisation. The section is about 2 or 3 minutes and a very minimal gesture-based improvisation that emulates a harp sound a couple of times would be perfect. I think this section is pretty much done. Corona time did bring some opportunities though. I co-composed for a piece Gently Quiet, commissioned by Dutch National Ballet. It was a film made in isolation, with the dances on the empty streets of Amsterdam, choreographed by Peter Leon. There was also a project with National Ballet Academy, where my composition on the shore was an inspiration for a film made with the ballet students now scattered all around the world in isolation. There were of course many other projects that got postponed, including an ambitious project in which I was commissioned for Grachten Festival, called From the Sun's Perspective. This piece started in summer of 2018 and has now been commissioned to headline Grachten Festival in 2021. The piece is a collaboration with Nicolas, choreographer Peter Leon and soprano Brigitte van Hagen. From the Sun's Perspective is an hour-long performance involving music, dance, and theater, and sign language. We are creating a performance to give a platform for telling stories centered around the concepts of exclusivity and connection. We are aiming to bring these elements equally into the concept and design, so that we can build a transparent relationship with the audience in which they can engage with the same questions. To prepare for this project, we continue to research in depth. During this process, we performed a smaller version last summer, during which we spent time with a sign language teacher. As we continue this research, we are also collaborating with a partially blind clarinetist. This is an ambitious project with 6 musicians and a dancer on stage, an hour of new music to be composed, lighting, stage design, directors, dramaturg, and the list goes on. The total budget for this project is over 131,000 euros. So we have done significant fundraising already. AFK have granted us 23,000 euros, and the commission from Grachten Festival itself is 20,000 euros. And we continue fundraising over the coming months. We have also established partnerships with companies such as Subpack, who makes portable sub-bass units to accompany the idea of performing for deaf people, and Rolly, a leader in media technology, to develop the technological needs of this show. Within Corona time, I thought that if I'm encouraging students to be flexible and inventive, this is the time to do it myself. So I also started to write funding proposals, applying for a number of projects with new perspectives. Creating platforms and connecting people is a necessity to me. It is the same core mentality that is also followed in the world we live in. What is the world we live in? The world we live in is a festival. The world we live in is a module. And soon, the world we live in will be a stichting. The World We Live In Festival was a student initiative created in the year 2015-16, together with Rosie and Melissa. We conceived a festival of music and art to be held in the school and open to the wider community. This event provided a platform for musicians and artists to engage with what is going on in the world around them through innovative art making. It also brought different people together, using the power of the arts to help us recognize our common humanity. After 2 years of organizing this festival and other related activities, we decided to make the world we live in a sustainable community by including and coaching the students from Prince Claus in the running of the festival. The best way to do this was to create a module at PCC. We brought the idea to Remco de Haan as entrepreneurship teacher, and with his huge support and care, we were able to offer the World We Live In module as an elective. From the first year of the festival, we already had a close relationship with Minerva Academy of Arts, and even had our children's semi-festival there. In the past year, we developed a network with Hanse Honors Program as well. We also developed a stronger connection with Hanse Grootjes. We're constantly bringing different disciplines and areas of expertise together, emphasizing the community side and collective learning as some of our core values. Some of our goals are providing an open platform for discussion with critical thinking, empowering the essence of the socially engaged artist, workshops from experts, working in a team goals, communication, planning, task division, shared leadership, creative project design and management, opportunity to develop their own projects within the module to be presented in the festival, fundraising through crowdfunding platforms in the Netherlands, promotion and marketing, on and offline, creative programming and artistic directing for a multidisciplinary arts projects, communication skills as a facilitator working with the community, creating a real-life non-profit arts festival at the end of the course. I recognized many confused students that are curious and open, but they just don't know what are the steps to take and how to take them. Some didn't even know such a path can exist, being a musician but also an activist. Here I will share some of the reflections reports that we received from students.
One of my favorite classes was when we hosted Lucas Dolls and had the opportunity to learn about his traveling experiences in Africa and all over the world. I was truly moved by the idea of using music as a tool to give happiness and a big smile to all these children. The course helped me on a very personal level. It helped me develop my own self as a person, and I realized that my voice and opinions actually matter. Even if we couldn't make the festival, I could still feel the result. Even more meaningful was the opportunity to understand myself better, in the sense of knowing who I am, and mostly who I want to be, recognizing myself as a creative person that maybe I had forgotten because of the fact I'm studying in a school.
This clear vision that I have now to be coaching musicians through their journey of renarration and reinvention helps me to find an even greater urge for myself to explore as many ways as possible to be able to continue my exploration. I empower them and they empower me. As I conclude in my research report, there are two ingredients for others wanting to take this journey. Firstly, is the process of guided and continuous reflection. In order for an artist to understand their own individual reasons for music making, they too must take this journey of self-narration. This is why I spent so much time in my research report discussing Ricoeur and Harari and Aristotle and others. Secondly is to start collaborating in multidisciplinary arts projects. Through the engagement with other art disciplines, a musician brings different layers of interpretation into her work. Moon's birthday. This was an absolute joy during Corona time, and it became one of my most personal projects, even if as a collaborator. I was introduced to a wonderful animator, Shadab Shayegan. She made a series of animations using children's painting in quarantine. The project was well covered by media, especially in Austria and Germany, and it was well seen in radios and TV programs, UNICEF, and many more. When my NAIP journey started 2 years ago, I was already out of my cocoon. I had a strong curiosity for multidisciplinary art projects because I already had a need to expand my communication skills through music. Undoubtedly, for me, compositional skills and improvisation were the gateways through which to enter this world. But as I hadn't had the chance yet to experiment with it in my practice, I was still unaware how much being an interdisciplinary musician would trigger me to expand my engagement with society within my own practice. It was only after dedicating myself to collaborative art making for the entirety of the past 2 years that I was able to understand this. To understand the possibilities that existed, I documented my own unconventional path with the guidance of my research coaches Leo Delfra and Mark van Raan. The more I created, the more I realized how with flexibility and versatility we can engage with our world as musicians. This also provided numerous opportunities to initiate new projects built from scratch and using different skills either as a musician, collaborator, or leader. Within the 2 years of NAIP study, I could also develop these leadership skills through the course led by Guy Wood. So this whole field of exciting new discoveries was not something that I could keep to myself. At first, I was not sure if my biography could be an inspiration for other young musicians. It was only when more and more of them contacted me, confused and lost, looking for some inspiration, knowing that I was one day standing where they are now, ready to go out of their safe cocoons, I decided to bring my new musical discoveries into my teaching through further developing this multidisciplinary pillar. Back then, I did not have the skills to coach students in following some certain path, simply because I hadn't gone through it entirely myself. But now, at the end of this NAIP journey, I am standing firm, passionate, with a bursting love for music and people, and want to dedicate all I have in my power to go through this with as many other musicians as I can. Reinventing your musicianship might feel uncertain, might feel fearful. To abandon comfort and safety to an unknown future can be as challenging mentally as economically. I am a butterfly, but I will continue to go back to my cocoon, continually re-emerging, and each time I will have less doubt and more courage to go through the configuration and defiguration over and over again, over and over and over and over and over.